I, 28 male, work in logistics, keep my circle incredibly small, and generally avoid drama like the plague. I like clean lines, clear communication, and keeping my head down. Girlfriend, 26 female, and I had been living together in my apartment for about 8 months. The apartment is entirely in my name, and I pay the mortgage. She moved in to save for our future, which basically translated to her spending her income on designer bags and expensive brunches while I covered the utilities, groceries, and housing. I let it slide because I cared about her and honestly believed we were building a life together. That was my first massive mistake. It all started on a random Tuesday evening. We were sitting on the couch, the TV droning in the background. She was scrolling through her phone, and I was reading a work email on mine. Out of nowhere, she locked her screen, turned to me, and adopted this condescending, boardroom lecture tone she exclusively reserved for moments when she wanted to establish absolute dominance in the relationship. She looked me dead in the eye and told me to stop liking other women's photos because it was disrespectful. Her voice was flat and ice-cold. I looked up, genuinely confused, and asked her what she was talking about. She shoved her screen in my face. It was a photo of my female coworker, fully clothed in a giant puffy winter coat, standing next to a snowman on a family ski trip. I had double-tapped it 3 days ago while mindlessly scrolling. She went on this massive rant about how I was publicly validating other women, how it humiliated her, and how it showed a complete lack of boundaries. She told me that if I respected her, I wouldn't engage with other women's content at all. She literally called it the standard. I stared at her. The sheer entitlement radiating off her was suffocating, but like I said, I despise unnecessary conflict. I took a deep breath, told her she was right, and admitted my mistake. I pulled up the app on my phone, navigated to the coworkers page, and unlike the photo of the snowman, I apologized and promised it wouldn't happen again. She gave me this smug, tight-lipped nod. She thought she had won. But my phone was still open in my hand. And right at the top of my feed, the algorithm decided to serve up a fresh post from my sister, 22F. My sister is a college student and was currently on spring break in Florida. The photo was a standard beach picture. She was in a bikini, sitting on the sand with her friends. I went to scroll past it, but my thumb hovered over the comment section. The very first comment, posted just 4 minutes prior, was a solitary, blazing fire emoji. I looked at the username. I clicked on the profile picture just to be absolutely sure. It was girlfriend's father, a 55-year-old married man. I didn't say a single word. I simply turned my phone around and handed it to girlfriend. The color drained from her face so fast you would have thought she just witnessed a terrible accident. Her smug posture instantly collapsed. Her eyes darted from the screen to me, then back to the screen. I kept my voice entirely level and asked her to explain the standard on this one. She swallowed hard, immediately scrambling for an excuse. She started stuttering, saying he was just being supportive, that it was a nice photo, and that I was twisting the situation to make him look bad. I asked her if she honestly believed a fire emoji on a 22-year-old's bikini picture from a 55-year-old man was just supportive. She started raising her voice, projecting her panic as anger. She claimed he was an older guy who didn't understand internet culture and that he probably meant the weather looked hot. Then she tried to flip it on me, accusing me of deliberately trying to make her family look bad to deflect from my own inappropriate behavior with the snowman picture. I took my phone back. I told her that I liked a picture of a snowman while her dad was creeping on my little sister. I told her that if she couldn't see the difference, we had a massive problem. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, thinking that would be the end of it for the night. A hypocritical argument, a tense evening, maybe an awkward apology from her in the morning. I had no idea that this single emoji was about to unravel a web of absolute deceit that would blow my entire life apart. The next morning, my phone rang at 7 a.m. The caller ID showed girlfriend's father. I answered it, expecting some kind of explanation or maybe an apology for causing a rift. Instead, his voice boomed through the speaker with immediate, unearned authority. He didn't even say hello. He called me a punk and told me to listen to him very closely. He said his daughter called him crying the night before because I upset her and insulted him. He demanded that I apologize to her and to him immediately, or he would make sure I regretted it, heavily implying that his family was too respected to be treated this way by someone like me. I hung up on him mid-sentence. The audacity was staggering, but it also triggered a deeply unsettling thought. Why was girlfriend so aggressively defensive? Why was girlfriend's father going straight to threats? They were overcompensating way too hard for a simple misunderstanding. I called my sister. I asked her, as casually as I could manage, if girlfriend's father interacted with her social media often. My sister went completely silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, she admitted she didn't want to tell me because she knew I'd get furious, but he had been in her direct messages for 3 months. My blood ran cold. I asked her what he was saying. She explained that he was constantly sending emojis, replying to her stories, and worst of all, he had aggressively offered her a job. Girlfriend's father owned a very lucrative mid-sized marketing firm, the same firm where girlfriend conveniently worked as a highly paid creative director. He had been relentlessly pushing my sister to drop out of her current internship and interview for a role as his personal assistant. He promised her a ridiculous salary, a company car, and private travel. The kicker? He explicitly told my sister not to tell me or girlfriend about the offer because he wanted it to be a surprise. I felt physically sick. But then the puzzle pieces slammed into place. Girlfriend wasn't oblivious to her dad's creeping. She knew. When I confronted girlfriend later that morning before she left for work, she didn't even try to deny it. She just dropped the innocent act entirely and pivoted to absolute manipulation. She paced around our living room, rolling her eyes. She actually snapped at me, saying, "So what?" She told me her dad likes young, pretty girls and that it keeps him distracted. She flat out admitted that as long as he's distracted chasing college girls, he doesn't micromanage her non-existent workload at the firm, and he keeps paying off her massive credit card bills. She told me my sister was an adult who could handle herself and that I needed to stop being so dramatic about how the real world works. I was genuinely horrified. I asked her if she seriously used my sister as bait to keep her dad off her back, just so she could keep draining his bank account. I didn't even wait for her to answer. I told her to get out, pack her things, and that we were entirely done. That's when her true villainy came out. Girlfriend let out this sharp, mocking laugh. She told me she wasn't going anywhere. She smugly pointed out that her name was on the utility bills, she received mail here, and under state law, she was a legal tenant. She bragged that I had to give her a formal 30-day written eviction notice, and even then, she would fight it in court and drag it out for months, while living rent-free. She looked me dead in the eyes and told me that if I tried to change the locks, she would sue me for an illegal self-help eviction. Then she walked over to the kitchen counter, picked up my spare set of car keys, and slipped them into her designer purse. She sneered and told me she would be taking my car since hers was supposedly in the shop. She said if I tried to physically stop her, she would call the police, tear her own shirt, and tell them I assaulted her. To top it off, she threatened to tell her dad's expensive corporate lawyers that my sister maliciously led him on to extort money from him, laughing as she asked who the authorities would believe, a wealthy, respected CEO or a broke college student. She walked into the master bedroom, slammed the door, and locked it from the inside. I was left standing in the living room of the house I worked so hard to buy, feeling completely trapped by a monster. I spent the night on the couch, furiously researching state tenancy laws on my phone. She was partially right. In our jurisdiction, receiving mail and cohabitating for over 6 months established a month-to-month tenancy, even without a formal lease. A standard eviction requires a 30-day notice to quit, followed by a court filing, which can take months. Girlfriend woke up the next morning feeling invincible. She flaunted her entitlement, walking right past me and deliberately knocking my laptop off the coffee table. The screen cracked right down the middle. She just gave me a sickeningly sweet smile and said, "Oops, clumsy me." When I calmly told her I needed my car keys to go to work, she laughed in my face, told me to take an Uber, and said she had a lunch meeting to get to. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just stood there and watched her leave the apartment. The second the door clicked shut, I walked into the master bedroom to grab some fresh clothes. The smell hit me immediately. She had taken a gallon bottle of industrial bleach from the laundry room and poured it meticulously over my entire closet. Every single suit I owned for work, every dress shirt, all ruined. The expensive carpet was stained white. I walked into the bathroom and found my PS5 sitting in the bathtub, completely submerged under the running faucet. She thought she was totally untouchable. She thought her family's money and the sluggish legal system made her a god in my apartment. But she lacked a fundamental understanding of emergency court orders. I immediately went into hyperfocus mode. I took high-resolution photos and videos of the bleach damage, the ruined carpet, the submerged electronics, and the cracked laptop. I pulled up the text messages she sent me from the locked bedroom the night before, where she explicitly stated she was going to make living here hell until I learned to respect her family. I didn't print out an eviction notice. I bypassed housing court entirely. I took an Uber straight to the county courthouse and filed an ex parte application for a domestic violence restraining order. In my state, domestic violence isn't strictly limited to physical punches. The intentional, malicious destruction of a cohabitant's personal property, combined with explicit written threats to ruin my life and file false police reports, constitutes abuse and coercive control under the family code. Because I had undeniable photographic evidence of the bleach, the waterlogged electronics, and her own written threats, the judge didn't hesitate. By early afternoon, a judge signed a temporary restraining order that included a strict kick-out provision. This is an emergency order requiring the abuser to vacate the shared residence immediately, regardless of their tenancy status or whose name is on the bills. At 4:30 p.m., girlfriend pulled up to my apartment complex in my car, probably expecting to find me cowering inside or desperately cleaning up her mess. Instead, she found two very unamused uniformed police officers waiting on the front porch with me. The older officer stepped forward, handed her the paperwork, and bluntly stated that they had a court order requiring her to vacate the premises immediately. He informed her that she was legally prohibited from coming within 100 yards of the residence or me. The color drained from her face for the second time that week. She started stammering, telling the cops they didn't understand, that she was a legal tenant, and that I had to give her 30 days. The officer cut her off. He firmly explained that it was a protective order, and tenancy rights do not supersede a judge's order regarding domestic abuse and property damage. He gave her exactly 15 minutes to gather essential clothing and toiletries, and demanded she hand over my car keys immediately. She lost her mind. She started screaming, throwing a massive tantrum on the front lawn. She frantically called her father on speakerphone, crying and demanding he send his lawyers right that second to arrest me. The officers simply placed their hands on their utility belts and calmly warned her she was about 30 seconds away from being placed in handcuffs for violating a court order in their presence. She practically threw my keys onto the grass. She packed one single suitcase under the watchful, silent eyes of the police, sobbing the entire time, and was escorted off my property to wait for a cab. The silence in my apartment after she left was the most beautiful, peaceful sound I had ever heard in my life. But getting her out of my house was just self-defense. What came next was pure, unadulterated revenge. Girlfriend's father thought he could still intimidate me from afar. 2 days later, he sent a formal cease and desist letter to my house via a private courier. The letter claimed that if I or my sister spoke a single word to anyone about his job offer or his inappropriate messages, he would sue us into the ground for defamation and tortious interference with his business. It was a pathetic scare tactic. Under U.S. law, the truth is an absolute defense to defamation. You cannot be successfully sued for defamation if the statements you make are factually accurate. Furthermore, reporting highly inappropriate conduct to relevant corporate entities is legally protected, provided you aren't extorting them for money. I asked for exactly $0. I just wanted him held accountable. I called my sister and had her screenshot every single direct message, timestamp, and emoji. We also did some digging and reached out to my sister's sorority sisters. Unsurprisingly, girlfriend's father wasn't just creeping on my sister. He had been sliding into the direct messages of at least 3 other 21-year-old girls from her campus. We compiled everything into a massive file: the emojis, the gross late-night messages, and the shady, unsolicited job offers clearly designed to get young women alone in private travel situations. I didn't bother replying to his lawyer. I didn't post anything on social media where he could play the victim. Instead, I paid a small fee online to pull the corporate filings for his marketing firm from the state business registry. I found the names and professional contact information for the firm's entire board of directors, as well as the executive contacts for their 3 largest corporate clients. I drafted a highly professional, entirely factual email. I titled it, "Notice of Inappropriate Conduct by CEO Regarding College-Aged Women." I attached the comprehensive PDF dossier of screenshots. I cited the exact dates and times. I didn't mention a single word about my failed relationship with his daughter or the eviction. I simply stated that as a concerned citizen, I believed the board should be aware of the massive legal liability currently occupying their CEO position. I hit send to everyone on that list. The corporate fallout was biblical. Board members do not care about a CEO's ego. They care about liability, stock prices, and public relations disasters. Within 48 hours, an emergency board meeting was called. Girlfriend's father had blatantly violated several strict morality and conduct clauses in his executive contract. He was given an ultimatum: step down immediately and quietly, or face a publicly humiliating termination and a potential lawsuit from the board for endangering the company.
He was forced out.
He lost his equity, his position, and his untouchable reputation in the industry. And because girlfriend was entirely reliant on her father's blatant nepotism to keep her inflated creative director job, the new interim CEO restructured the department and fired her within the week. In the span of exactly 9 days, girlfriend went from an entitled princess trying to hold my apartment hostage and ruining my clothes to entirely unemployed, legally barred from my home, and sleeping on her humiliated parents' couch. She tried to text me from a burner number 3 weeks later. She said her dad lost everything, she had nothing, and asked if I was happy now, begging me to let her come over so we could fix this. I didn't reply. I just screenshotted the text and forwarded it to my lawyer to add to the evidence file for the permanent restraining order hearing. They thought their money and their status gave them the absolute right to treat people like disposable playthings. They forgot that the truth, when aimed correctly, doesn't care about your tax bracket or your ego. If you want to learn how to legally evict toxic partners, dismantle entitled families, and protect your peace using nothing but patience and a solid paper trail, smash that subscribe button.